There is so much gear in Forbidden West, and it can be really easy to miss out on some of the most useful and fun new stuff. For example, it's really easy to overlook the Knockdown Sharpshot Bow. You can pick this up in Barren Light really early, and it gives you access to Knockdown Precision Arrows, which are good for exactly what they sound like, knocking down machines. Knockdown is one of the most useful mechanics in the game, and it's particularly useful at the start to set up for critical strikes, which deal way more damage than any early weapon can, especially if you grab the 2 critical strike plus skills in the warrior tree or boosted with outfit perks or weaves. So having access to knockdown arrows is super handy. Now, there are very specific rules for how knockdown works, and it can be pretty frustrating if you don't understand them. So we go into all the details in my damage types video, but let me give you the essentials right now. If you hit small machines anywhere in the body with a knockdown arrow, they'll go down. For some, it might take 2 arrows, but usually it's just 1. Just make sure you do hit them in the body and not the head or neck. For medium and large machines, it's a bit trickier because they have specific zones that need to be hit to trigger knockdowns. For pretty much all of them though, hitting the legs or feet will work. Some machines have 1 or 2 additional zones you can hit, but the legs or feet are always a good bet. You'll need to land at least a couple of arrows to trigger a knockdown on medium and large machines, and some of the toughest ones will need a few more. But even our measly green knockdown sharpshot bow can get the job done, especially if you upgrade it a bit to unlock its knockdown power perk and slap a knockdown power coil on it. Not to mention, its regular precision arrows are only 1 impact damage point behind the regular green sharpshot bow, which has the strongest ones you can get on a green bow, so it can deal some decent damage too. Now, the other bow with knockdown precision arrows is the blue exacting sharpshot bow, which you can get at the Bulwark or Cliffwatch. Its knockdown arrows have the same hidden 120 knockdown power stat as the green knockdown bow, but its concentration and overdraw perks will boost the knockdown power, and as a blue bow, it has 2 coil slots. Its regular precision arrows are quite a bit stronger as well. There's also a couple of bows with advanced knockdown arrows. You can get the Warden Sharpshot bow by trading in Hunting Grounds medals at the arena, and then you'll find the Gravesinger in the Burning Shores DLC. But at this stage of the game, I honestly think you're better off using a spike thrower with drill spikes for knockdown. See, drill spikes actually deal more knockdown than any other ammo in the game. Well, except for Thunderjaw disc launchers, which obviously aren't easily accessible, and stagger beams on a tripcaster, which just never seem to work out very well. So drill spikes are really the best ammo for knockdowns. Even the biggest, baddest machines will topple over with just a couple of these drilling into their legs. The easiest way to get access to drill spikes is by purchasing the Scalding Spike Thrower from the merchant in Camp Nowhere, but its fire spikes are kind of useless, and the high ground perk isn't great either. So instead, I would highly recommend doing the Signal Spike side quest as soon as you can to get the Spinthorn. This is one of the best knockdown weapons in the game, and it will give you access to some decent explosive spikes too, which also deal a decent amount of knockdown, by the way. To start Signal Spike, talk to Silga at the workbench between 2 shelters over here. The Spinthorn can honestly be your go-to knockdown weapon for the entire game. The only weapon with more knockdown potential is the legendary Last Argument, which comes from a side quest that I don't want to spoil in the Burning Shores. You can pick up the purple Vindicator from the Raintrace salvage contractor much earlier than that, but the blue Spinthorn actually has more knockdown potential because of its knockdown power perk. The Vindicator is still very good for knockdown though, and its drill spikes deal more impact and tear damage, and it has better explosive spikes, so it's up to you. Keep in mind, drill spikes are also really good for dealing impact damage. Go ahead and freeze a machine, then load it up with drill spikes, and just watch its health melt away. But let's circle back to sharpshot bows for a minute, because you also shouldn't be ignoring the new Strikethrough precision arrows. These are really interesting because they ignore armor plates to deal full impact damage to the target underneath. This makes them especially useful against human enemies with helmets and body armor. Unfortunately, you still won't get a headshot multiplier by hitting a rebel through the helmet with one of these, but getting full damage is still a lot better than the massive nerf you get with regular arrows. It's also a lot of fun to see if you can manage to hit multiple enemies at once with a strikethrough arrow. Plus, keep in mind you can certainly use strikethrough arrows the same way you would use regular or advanced precision arrows, which I actually often do because they're cheaper to craft than advanced arrows but still deal more damage than regular ones. The easiest way to get access to strikethrough arrows is to pick up the Delta Sharpshot bow from Thornmarsh, but it's going to take some work to upgrade it, so you might want to consider grabbing the Piercing Sharpshot bow from the Hive Rebel camp first instead. This is a tough camp to clear, but I'd say getting the Piercing early is worth it. And if you're really having trouble with the camp, you can actually sneak into the command area from the back, snag the bow out of the chest, and scamper off to safety. Later on, you can get Regala's Wrath during a main quest if you choose the harsher option when dealing with Regala. The Strikethrough Arrows on this bow are the second strongest in the game, but if you miss it, you might be able to pick up the Black Tide shortly afterwards in the Burning Shores for just 1 shard. You need to have pre-ordered the DLC or the complete edition on PC to have access to the Black Tide. The Delta Strikethrough Arrows are still stronger though, so if you can't get the Black Tide, don't worry about it, especially since the strongest Strikethrough precision arrows in the game can be found on the legendary Gravesinger's Lament in the Burning Shores. But I want to switch gears away from weapons for a second to make sure you aren't sleeping on smoke bombs. Smoke bombs are super strong because they'll put every enemy within a 35-meter radius into the confused state, which gives you an opportunity to easily regain stealth in the middle of a chaotic fight. Or you could use the smoke cover to pull off a cheeky silent strike once the confused timer ticks down. Plus, if your weapon has a stealth damage perk, or if you've coiled it with some stealth damage coils, popping smoke will allow you to gain that stealth boost, even if you're right in front of the enemy. We talk about smoke bombs a bunch more in my stealth masterclass, but just remember these are probably your best tool for getting a reset mid-fight. I always keep smoke bombs front and center in my hunter's toolkit. Another excellent way to control a fight is with a rope caster. This was true in Zero Dawn as well, but rope casters are a bit trickier to use out here in the West. The main difference is you can't tap fire them anymore. Well, I mean you can tap fire them, but the ropes won't attach to armor plates when you tap fire. Instead, you need to draw your shot at least a little bit to ensure the ropes attach to any part of the machine. A good rule of thumb is to wait until you see the overdraw halo beginning to close in, or just go for the full overdraw for extra tie down. That's also the reason that, unfortunately, the green rope caster is kind of useless. It doesn't have an overdraw perk and can't be overdrawn at all, so I wouldn't bother with it. Instead, I'd recommend grabbing the blue anchor from Scalding Spear or the Eventide from Saltbite. I personally have a slight preference for the Eventide because it has an additional reload speed perk, and I think it's a little easier to upgrade early on, especially if you farm metal blocks to trade with the salvage contractors for parts, which we talk about in my essential tips video. You might want to just head over to Thornmarsh early though to grab the purple elite rope caster, which is very strong and will serve you well throughout the entire game. The only stronger rope caster is the legendary Tie That Binds in the Burning Shores, which is honestly kind of OP. In addition to drawing your shot, there's a few other subtle mechanics you'll need to understand about rope casters to use them most effectively and avoid getting frustrated. So I made a rope caster masterclass where we cover it all. So not everyone is sleeping on rope casters, but I do think a lot of players are sleeping on warrior bows. I certainly was when I first started playing. Their low impact damage stats and accuracy might deter you, but once you understand how to use them properly, they can actually deal a ton of damage really fast. In fact, a warrior bow is my go-to high DPS weapon. Not only can they dish out damage fast, but they're super resource efficient as well. Warrior bow light arrows only cost Ridgewood and shards to craft. The trick to dealing a lot of damage with warrior bows is to use the spread shot weapon technique to fire volleys of 5 arrows at once. It takes a bit of practice to learn how to fire them quickly though, which is really important. So I broke down the timing to get it right in my warrior bow masterclass. Now green warrior bows aren't going to give you crazy damage, but blue ones start to show their worth. You can pick up the shearing in Plainsong or the melee in Scalding Spear. The purple death rattle has the highest impact damage in its class, but I actually prefer the renegade because it has a 15% critical hit chance perk, and I like to coil my warrior bows with crit chance coils. Both of those bows are sold in Thornmarsh. Of course, legendaries are going to offer the most damage output, and fortunately, my top pick, the Karja's Bane, is relatively easy to obtain by completing all the gauntlet runs. The Rain of Sparks, which you'll find in a New Game Plus run, does deal a bit more impact damage, but the instant burning chance perk drives me nuts, so I don't bother with it. But let's back up for a second and talk about those crit chance coils I mentioned, because they're really powerful and a lot of players overlook them. Critical hits are higher damage shots that randomly occur on almost all weapon types, and you can find a table of the base chance for each weapon class and the damage boost you get when a crit occurs in the tutorial tab of the notebook. Notice how warrior bows get a 2 times damage multiplier when they get a crit, and sharp shot bows have the highest damage multiplier, clocking in at 2.5x. Now, both of these weapons only have a 5% chance to crit, so by default it's not reliable, but there is a way for us to make it much more reliable: critical hit chance coils, particularly the purple 15% ones. If we load up 3 of these on a purple sharp shot bow, we'll have a 50% chance of getting a crit. crit. In other words, on average, half our shots will crit, and when they do, we'll get 2.5x damage. That works out to the same average damage you'd get if you loaded up 3 25% long range, stealth, or high ground coils, which are what most players gravitate towards for their sharpshot bow. But I would argue a crit build is better because it's not dependent on positioning or stealth. And on a legendary bow where you can load up 5 crit chance coils, there's no contest. A crit build is definitely best. There's 3 purple crit chance coils in the base game, and a bunch of blue 10% ones as well. If you'd like some help finding them, I made a video and spreadsheet database for the location of every coil and weave in the game. Getting back to weapons though, perhaps the most slept on class in the game are shredder gauntlets. Similar to warrior bows, shredders are super strong and resource efficient once you understand how to use them correctly, but they have some additional features that make them even better. The whole idea with shredders is that you basically need to play frisbee with the enemy, throwing and catching the disc. Each throw after a successful catch deals more damage than the last, all the way up to the 4th throw, which explodes. Now, shredder explosions are special because they actually deal a bunch of tear damage, so they rip off components instead of destroying them like other explosions. Certain shredder ammo types are also good for dealing knockdown damage, and elemental shredders, especially the shock ones, are insanely strong because they can keep an enemy immobilized almost non-stop. Learning how to catch shredders consistently is the trick to mastering them, and we cover exactly how to do that in my masterclass. I'm gonna head over there right now, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you there in just a second.